Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992 by Francis Ford Coppola is a film that I mostly really enjoy. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and some of the movie merchandise surrounding this film. And it's a departure from what we saw from the classic Universal Monsters depiction of Dracula. And it's even different from what Hammer horror was doing in the 60s and 70s. And as you move on into the 80s, we're really seeing the same sort of song and dance for Dracula. It's Widow's Peak and it's a black cape, and the character kind of has become a characterization of itself, and Coppola really wanted to do things differently with his Dracula. Coppola definitely pulls from the novel a bit more, but he really had a clear vision on how he wanted his film to look. And this film really starts off heavy and with intense action, different from what we've seen in other Dracula movies. I love the look of Dracula. I think Gary Oldman does a great job portraying the character. He looks so different than what we have grown to know as Dracula. And again, that was all by choice. Coppola told his costume designers, give me weird, give me things from your nightmares. And I definitely think that that translates. You see that in lots of little details in the film. I mean, if you saw the jailer's helmet, it's like this square cage. And I love that they got Tom Waits to play Renfield. He does such a great job.
No, thank you, Mr. Renfield. How are you feeling tonight?
It was also by choice to not use any CG, so everything was done practically on huge sound stages. And I think it pays homage to the classic films, but also still keeps the feel of something from a different time. I love this shot here. Those eyes kind of remind me of the eyes on the Castlevania box for the Nintendo. So there's inspirations for me of the things I love all over this film. But there are also the more questionable moments of the movie, and if you've seen it, well then you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Or who knows, maybe those things didn't actually happen. Dracula was doing mind tricks on us. That could be a possibility. No, but when it comes to casting, for the most part, I think the film really works. I like a lot of the players in the movie. Anthony Hopkins is a good Van Helsing, in my opinion. And I like, when they're out hunting the monsters, right? It's very classic sort of monster movie, in my opinion. And that Victorian Gothic scenery really plays into it really well. The creature and monster design, I think, is top-notch. Again, leaning into the practical effects and visual effects, not so much the CGI, or not the CGI at all, I think is very effective, and it's a job well done. I love how the movie really ramps up the intensity in these scenes where we see Van Helsing just going to work. It does it with a lot more, let's just say, gore. I really do love this sequence, and seeing this when I was younger, it's definitely a thing of nightmares a little bit. I mean, it didn't scare me all that much, but again, when you think of Dracula, you think of these stories that we know, we've never really seen it told this way. But I do love that they have some time for Van Helsing to still be Van Helsing.
I want you to bring me before nightfall a set of post-mortem knives.
An autopsy? Lucy?
No, not exactly. I just want to cut off her head and take out her heart. Check.
Suncoast Motion Picture Company may be the greatest store that's ever been opened. And I think there may be still a few open today. It serves as a huge inspiration for two-day rentals. I loved this store growing up. It was your one-stop shop for movies, movie merchandise, toys, collectibles, and the only place you could get your hands on these awesome Bram Stoker's Dracula, dare I say, figures, dolls. I love these things. What more can I say? I absolutely love them. I'm missing only one, the werewolf, but after what we've seen of the werewolf, can't unsee that. So let's start with the first one here, Vlad the Impaler. An awesome character. This design of this armor It actually kind of reminds me of something you would see from like a Dark Souls character. As a matter of fact, it reminds me a lot of Ornstein. Yeah, that armor. If you were to turn it red, it kind of reminds me of that armor, a boss in Dark Souls. So I think there's some parallel in design there. But before I get too sidetracked, you see what you get here. There's no articulation, no movement, but I do like this thing. It's big enough to get some decent detail. I can't say it looks exactly like Gary Oldman, but it looks exactly like Vlad the Impaler. That red paint just really pops. And it's a standout from the three that I have from this collection. It's probably my favorite. And unfortunately, it's about the only Vlad the Impaler figure that you can find, which is really absurd. And here's Dracula in his Victorian streetwear, looking dapper. That outfit's just on point. And I like what they did with the Victorian Gothic sort of spin on it. And I think actually one of my first characters I made in Bloodborne, I made to look like Gary Oldman in this outfit. And of course, here's Mina, played by Winona Ryder. Doesn't look anything like her at all. And if you didn't know this was a Bram Stoker's Dracula figure, you may just think that I collect Victorian dolls kind of like this. I don't really know. But I got these three together, so it's nice to have. And of course, Dracula's always stalking Mina. And I gotta say, the most of the movie is the love story. And I'm fine with a love story. I really am. I mean, Gary Oldman's got that great line, "I've crossed oceans of time to find you." I just think some of the scenes are a bit drawn out. I think I read somewhere that there was some tension between the two actors. And honestly, you know a way to a woman's heart. It's through a sweet puppy dog. They could have just cut to the chase and gone right to the scene and been done with it. So these are all done by a company called Out of Character. I didn't get any footage of it, but on the bottom of the figure's foot, it says manufactured by Out of Character. This particular line, though, is called In Character. And they did some other ones in Suncoast that were exclusive. I think they did some Star Wars ones that were the same size and kind of the same deal, but I know nothing else about these. At first, I thought they were done by Applause. I have some Batman Returns figures that are that same size that were also sold at Suncoast by Applause, but these are not manufactured by Applause. So, viewers, if you know more about these at all, or in-character, out-of-character manufacturing that is a manufacturer of these that made these, I would love to know. Please comment down below. With so many interesting character designs, I'm really surprised that more figures weren't made or haven't been made. It would have been neat if Kenner got in the mix, and I say Kenner because they did so many licensed movie figures, even rated R films, but maybe the themes in this movie were a little strong. You can find some custom figures that are very pricey, very neat, and they're awesome. I mean, look at these things, but you're definitely going to pay the price for those custom figures. That nasty, dirty werewolf and Dracula's final form were available in a 2-pack by McFarlane in his Movie Maniacs line. I don't own this set. It looks like a really cool looking set. I think you're going to get quality with McFarlane, but if you're looking to maybe grab those for your collection, they are available. I think they're a bit harder to come by these days, but neat nonetheless. Now it's time to talk a little bit about the Bram Stoker's Dracula video games. I can't believe they made so many different versions of this video game, but that's kind of how they did it back in the 90s. Suncoast sold video games. I don't know if they sold these games in their stores, but for the sake of conversation, we're going to pretend that they did. So the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo versions of this game are very similar. Actually, all the versions of this game are similar. You play as Harker, John Harker, fighting your way through Transylvania, trying to get to Dracula's castle to save Mina. Super Nintendo and Sega versions are very similar. The Nintendo version of this game is supposed to be really good. Haven't played it. It would be hard for me to believe that any version of these games would be very good. I think that they're all bad, It's just which one is shittier than the other one. And I think I may have found the one that's less shitty. And that's the Game Gear version of Dracula. I actually picked this up at a retro video game store last year because I knew I had an Analog Pocket on pre-order and it could play Game Gear games, because I didn't own a Game Gear growing up, so I don't know much about their catalog, but I saw this was available, and as much as I love movie licensed video games and I'm a sucker for those things, I had to check it out, and I've actually had a lot of fun with it. Just recently I played through it on a kind of cozy night. The fall weather was kicking in, and you run around and you kill your very stereotypical sort of haunted house monsters, your ghouls, your goblins, your zombies, things like that. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a short game. It's not overly complicated. And like I said, I think of the versions I've played, it's probably my favorite. So if you have the means to check it out, I definitely would. The other version of the game I wanted to talk about was the Sega CD version that was released, and they went a whole different sort of direction with this one. It has the full motion video cutscenes in all their high quality glory. It doesn't include every scene from the movie. Let's be very clear about that. It has these little cut sequences that are nicely animated, which I think is really cool. The game is very straightforward. There's not a lot of options. I don't think there's any options. And you have kind of this clunky jump, a punch that sometimes works. You can knock the shit out of those bats. That's kind of fun to do. And, the different enemies. I'm not sure who this guy is here. This is me playing through it when I capture this footage. But, cheap little things like that remind me of the Sega and Super Nintendo version, right? That trap's kind of almost unavoidable. I did think that this library sequence with these books flying from the shelves was kind of neat. And, for 1993, 92, this was groundbreaking stuff. The way that this camera kind of pans around and your character walks out of it adds dimension, to games that didn't really have a lot of dimension. But you'll see me here just doing some really amazing high kicks to whatever this is, and I just give it the beat down and kind of move on. But I think this is the furthest I've ever made it in the game whenever I was playing it to capture for this episode. So, I don't know if this is the best version of Bram Stoker's Dracula or the worst. Actually, I don't think it's the best. I think the Game Gear version is the best, but crazy to think that there were so very many different versions of this game released for so many different platforms. I think it's a shame, just on the topic of video games in particular, that someone doesn't do like a beat 'em up in the style of Golden Axe or Sunset Riders with that type of graphics in the world of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the movie, because there's enough characters, there's enough cool stuff there. I mean, they attempted it back in the 90s, right? Either the effort wasn't there or the technology wasn't there, but I would love to see something like that. And I would definitely love to see more action figures made from this movie. I think there's a lot to pull from. But viewers, what do you think? Did you enjoy this film when it came out? Did your mind change later on? Do you still enjoy it now? Would you like to see some more merchandise, some updated merchandise, be it a video game or toys, come out for this movie? Would you pick that up? And if you're new here, it's your first time stopping down, I truly appreciate it. And I would love it even more if you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, and you stay up to date with everything I do here. If it has to do with movies, video games, toys, music from time to time, I'll probably end up talking about it here on my channel. And it's like I always say at the end of my videos, let's be kind as we rewind and fast forward through time. Thanks so much for stopping by 2 Day Rentals.